Welcome. Well, today's the day. Let me give y'all just a bit of a warning. I am not the expert on headgear or anything in particular. I just like the hobby and I'm pretty much just getting into it. However, there are not a lot of videos on the internet that talk about features, basic features to look for in officer visor caps that I think I might be able to do a little bit of, the collecting world a favor by going over some key points. If what I say turns out to be accurate. Now, of course, I encourage fact checking in the comments. So as y'all have probably seen in the past, I have two officer visors here. This one is an Erel extra. I keep a little sponge insert. It's named celluloid diamond, looks good. You can see there where the sweatband attaches is good. The seam lines up nicely. One thing just while we're here to point out, always want to see a little bit of grease on the brim, guys. That's where, they were taking them off to do this or that. They were on and off these officers' heads very often. Now, I don't think this one was worn very much. There is, slight, I won't call it mothing, maybe it is, but you can see here, the color of the piping is so white and it's been covered by this very thick aluminum cord for a while. This is a double bullion example, so that means there is aluminum alloy bullion used for the wiring on the eagle and the wreath there. Now there are many different variations of cockades and wreaths and eagles, not just bullion ones but metal ones. Know your history, guys. Study a particular company over time. I started collecting not too long ago, and my main interest, and it still is perhaps my main interest, are daggers. But anyone who collects daggers knows there are countless makers that have their own unique features, and the same can be said for the headgear. You can see here there are two main types of visor caps. We'll get into that in a minute, but teller form and saddle form. Now, saddle form, you can think of like a horse saddle. It has that, that rounded shape to it, the peak. Ideally, you can see a peak on the back too, which you can see a bit of here. This is a very nice example. And teller form is more of a diagonal profile. It's going to have a rounder top. This is longer. We'll talk a little bit about the dimensions later. But I actually, guys, took some notes here. So let's go over some things I want to talk about. So 5-piece construction. Now, and when I say 5-piece, I mean the panels here. And there are different kinds of wools. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you can count them. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and of course the one on top, okay? Same thing about this one. I won't go through the effort of showing you, but you're gonna wanna see those 5 panels. This center band here, this is basically just reinforced leather that's wrapped in cloth. That is like a napped cloth to give it kind of a velvety appearance. Again, I'm not the expert. I'm sure there are maybe private examples that have for other sorts of, finer materials. This one here does have a lovely texture. I try not to touch it too often, but, with cloth stuff, you can worry a lot less with handling them versus metal stuff. And I've learned that from firsthand experience. We talked about the center thing. Of course, we have the cockade and the eagle and the wreath. Cockade is the little center circular device here. The insignia comes in metal. You can see this one has got a metal eagle, but actually has a bullion wreath. So this would be known, I guess, as a mixed hat or visor, I don't know. So mixed insignia. Often you will see, double metal. This one's double bullion. You see various, variations of what the individual officer wanted, because again, you have to keep in mind these are all private purchased. So let's see, and the chin strap. So there were two main forms of chin strap, I believe, but you see one here that's about 2 millimeters in diameter, and a thicker one that's about 3. From what I've seen and read, Agnolia's uniform book, and then I think it's Watkins, his book on Third Reich headgear. He covers some other variations, but for the most part, I believe there are 2 and 3 millimeter diameter, and these are aluminum. Early ones were actually silver bullion, and you will see sometimes examples that actually have silver bullion wreaths and eagles that will patinate to obviously kind of a brownish. There's different ways silver patinates, but it's very beautiful, and those, of course, are early and very collectible. One little tidbit I think I can safely provide when it comes to telling the real difference between the saddle form and the teller form style hats comes down to the seams. So if you can see it, I know okay, there we go, it's a little bit better. The length of this one here on both sides, as well as the back, are all the same, except you will notice that it's probably a little bit less than half the length of the front seam. When it comes to the teller forms, you're gonna see almost the same from the sides, right? That's about half, if not half. But I believe the one back here is considerably longer and closer to, if not, exceeding half the length of the seam on the front. I'm not going to show you this one because you have to keep in mind these are all the same size. So this seam here, compared to this seam here, it would probably be at least, to the breast of the eagle. So that's just one little tidbit I've learned. And these seam differences contribute to the shape and profile of the hat. Okay, so just a little more about insignia, and I'm not going to cover this very much because I think this is the #1 area that headgear collectors go wrong, because there are so many intricacies. My #1 point of advice would be study a particular maker and study them chronologically. This is Erel, and this one here is Peküro. Now, forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, but that is, a common maker of hats. And we'll show you the insides. I may have shown you the inside of this one already, but we'll show you this one here soon. Anywho, you can see here that it is aluminum wire as well as a aluminum eagle. There were different kinds of eagles. Early ones were nickel. Then they had the aluminum alloy, and then they also had pot metal ones. So based on my judgment, this is relatively early. But again, you must know the maker, and I've seen Peküros, probably about 6 or 7 bookmarked that all have different features. And this one here, like we said earlier, is a mixed insignia. We have the bullion down here that is aluminum, and I've seen ones online that, where I sit there and I count to make sure, first of all, what I have is the same. For instance, you see 5 wires here. If we can maybe get a 45, yeah, right there, about 3 o'clock. So you can see 5 wires, bundle. You start counting those little things. It's important, right? So do that with pieces you can find online with quality images, and perhaps create a list or at least a bookmark list to where you can, from reputable websites, where you can reference certain insignia. Now, obviously, books are the best, but guys, these books nowadays are so expensive, you might as well just save up and buy a hat. It's nuts. So do your best to find galleries on the internet to compare and cross-reference what you may have in mind to purchase. We see here double bullion on the Erel. And guys, don't expect perfection. These things went through a war, right? So you're gonna see, God, my finger keeps getting in the way, but a little bit of fraying, around, 6 or 7 mark here on the left-hand side. And things like that happen, okay? But you're gonna more or less wanna see at least symmetry when it comes to the number of wires. Now, there will be imperfections. These were, not just machined. There's hands that were making these hats, right? And but you're going to want to see quality. You're going to want to see at least the same amount of wires, or at least the remnants of said wires on both sides of your insignia. And you can see here, this looks very rough, but if you count, it's all good. It's all there. And, they age over time, and with weather and different humidity factors, it can expand and contrast just like any other metal. So just keep all that in mind. Again, my biggest takeaway would just be study your particular maker chronologically if possible. Okay. So let's get into what makes up the exterior here. And I'll tell you what, guys, it's just really yarn. There are 3 kinds though, and there are a lot of different degrees of thickness, as you can see, to the results in the process of creating these threads and how they're woven into the hat. But there's a lot of differences between just the 3 kinds of yarn available. So there are woolen, worsted, and Eskimo yarn. So I might be saying worsted incorrectly, but that's what at least I read on, on the page of a book dedicated to this. So tricot. Tricot is going to be the woolen and worsted. Now, tricot is a pattern. Imagine, let's see if we can go here. If we can for a second, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is very up close, but if we get to the side, you can see it goes over 2 and up 1. All right, so that's going to be a slope formula like that. Y equals half x plus 1. So that's when you weave. The most common just being the woolen is a 1-stage process, but there are various grains that can come out of it. This is what gives. Let me just run out of breath here. You see the texture. You see the grain. Do you see how it's all going sort of in one direction? And this is a fine one that, you can't really see it. But if you can, it should be going about that way. Whoops. Let's look at the front of the hat. Might be better. So especially up top there by the eagle, you see the grain. And that is what is known as tricot. So when you make a yarn that goes up 1 and over 2, it results in this kind of grain pattern. Now it depends on the material that's used. Again, I mentioned that the standard is the woolen yarn, and that is just a 1-stage process to produce the actual wool. Now, the more desirable of the 2 kinds of tricot is the worsted. Now that's doe skin. So that is a 4-stage process, very fine grain, and there's a lot of post-process stuff done to it. They nap it to basically the point where you cannot see the grain at all. So golly, if you can see my
I wish this, even here in person, looking on it on the shitty laptop, I can tell that this is basically grainless. And that's what's going to happen with those, with the worsted doeskin examples. So these command a little, premium. Here's that ventilated cockade I may have mentioned earlier. So this is probably an Erel one. Anywho, just wanted to mention those two kinds of tricot. Now, the third kind is Eskimo yarn. Now, remember what we said about, I don't know anything about creating yarn or whatever, but 1 up, 2 over. This is 2 up, I'm sorry, and that should be 2 down. So this is going to be basically, 45-degree angle line. When you blend that, it's probably the finest, and it was used, they used silks and different kinds of material that were more premium, I'm sure, as well as finishing and napping techniques. It would come out like doeskin, if not finer. Here's the only example I could find. This is an enlisted overseas Luftwaffe that allegedly is in Eskimo wool. You can see there that it's very nappy, right? There is a lot of almost beading to it on the outside. Perhaps that's, it probably would look better on an officer's visor, but, that might be, this could be a real deal Eskimo, right? So that's pretty rare to see. So one more thing to note about the tricot woolen yarn, particularly in regard to its grain, is that it should be going in opposing directions. You can see on the left panel here, it's going up. On the right panel, it's going more to the right. Do you see that? You see that, collectors? You see that? Can you get that, Ob? Same thing with the Erel, okay? On the top, you're gonna wanna see not grain that is straight, perpendicular, and my camera won't focus. It's gonna be a little bit canted to the right there. So I'm trying to get the front of it. Can you see how it's a little canted? Same goes for the Erel. Now, should be able to make out the grain, yeah. There's more of a significant lean to the right here on the front with the tricot grain. So most examples did come with a celluloid sweatband. You can see this one here is named. When items are named, visors in particular, where you can see someone has inscribed it, you need to take it out into the sun and see if you can see a real indentation into the paper that's been inserted. And I believe this is just pencil, so it was actually pretty easy to make out. Definitely, in my heart, I find it to be original, what he wrote and what he put in there, 80, close to 90 years ago. You can see his initial there as well. Celluloid is not to be confused with plastic. So this, you see how it kind of crinkles? It's not like a plastic bag or covering. These will often crack. Many times you do see officers' visors or enlisted visors that have the sweatband completely removed just because it has either been worn off or just slowly degraded over time and chipped away. These will chip away, so you gotta be careful with the interior. The linings were either cotton or oil-proof cloth. I'm trying to read notes. I had trouble in school, guys. So cotton or oil-proof cloth, typically. Now in the Erel extras and other, extra custom hats that were ordered, you could have what's known as rayon or what is the other one? Silk. So this could be the cloth, or it could be silk. It is very smooth to the touch. This leather is quite aged, but this is a high quality hat.
You can tell it hasn't been used too much. I mean, the full celluloid diamond has been retained over time. We'll see that the liner here, this is correct for Peküro. On the inside of these liners, they inserted it was a rubber cork, I guess, I'm not really sure what the name would be, but it served as a more or less a protective barrier between the exterior of the visor and the sweatband here. Now, here's an example of what that looks like. There's a little bit left in here, and I'm not going to take it out or fold it out and show you guys, but it's going to look like this. This cork rubber stuff had a shelf life of about 15 to 20 years. If I were to give this just the slightest bit of pressure, it would crumble in my hands. Oh, here we go. Here's some other pieces. Yeah, you can see it's going to look something like that. So that is what you want to see, something very brittle, if it is still there. Now, here's the inside of the Erel. This is a Erel Extra. So you can see this guy spent a little extra to get his pimped out with the, the double bouillon. There's the Erel mark there. You can see, look at the quality of the stitching, guys. It's really phenomenal. Now we were just talking about the cork insert that went beneath the sweatband. There isn't one here, but there is what appears to be like a silk liner that is, untouched, that would have the same shape as that insert in most other hats, as the cork insert. So I'm not going to flip it up because I do not want to tamper with, how nice this leather already is. You can see this one again has the celluloid, and you can see that crack there. I got to be real careful with this, this little crease, because like I said, these will crack. All right, well, we're back at the cabinet. I think I've rambled enough about the subject, as much as I can that might be actually informative. But if maybe one of you guys goes to a show and sees a hat and remembers, hey, those grains are supposed to be going in different directions on the front panel, and you remember this video, I'll be forever grateful. So I've learned through YouTube, like I've said in past videos, maybe someone can learn something today, and maybe I can learn. If I'm wrong, again, go ahead and correct me. But in my opinion, we have two totally original pieces here, and I think getting the close-up today may have helped someone. Hell, it maybe even helped me just having the whole day to look at them and to take notes and make this video. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.